Thank you for tuning in to The Voice of Adventure. Today we will finish Vaughn and Gamal's story in Vampire Trap Part 3. In the story so far, Vaughn has been taken captive. He tried to escape twice but was caught each time. He was then forced to listen to Gamal's chosen story. Through that story and his discussion with Gamal, he learned that everyone Gamal knew has left him over the years. Seeing the hurt and loneliness Gamal carried, Vaughn decided to become his friend. A few days had passed since Vaughn decided to rescue Gamal from his loneliness. Vaughn listened carefully to each story and tried to have a meaningful conversation with Gamal after each one. He answered each of Gamal's questions honestly, and even asked Gamal questions when he had the chance. Gamal, however, seemed confused about this sudden change. He wasn't ready for Vaughn to suddenly engage with the stories. Gamal hesitated with forming a deep connection with Vaughn, expecting Vaughn to just leave when he had the chance. But Vaughn stayed true to his decision and continued befriending Gamal. Just as every other morning, the sun rose over the forest, casting the trees in a golden light. Birds flew around the windows, showing how free they were. And Gamal made Vaughn wait a long while for breakfast. The last couple days, Vaughn had been shackleless, which he was very happy about. So maybe their friendship was going somewhere. The sun continued climbing the blue sky, and Gamal was nowhere to be seen. Vaughn knew that he would soon barge into the room, so he closed the curtains and laid on his bed. Thankfully, Gamal had let Vaughn take a few books from the study, so he didn't have to sit there doing nothing. A few hours passed before Gamal walked into the room. "Breakfast?" he asked, sounding more excited than the previous days. "Of course, I was waiting for you to ask." Vaughn followed Gamal to the dining room, making small talk as they went. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes, I haven't gotten a good night's sleep in a while. It was nice to actually sleep through the night." They walked into the dining room with food warm and ready. Gamal and Vaughn took their seats and enjoyed the delicious breakfast Gamal had laid out. As they ate, Vaughn paid close attention to Gamal and how he acted. Vaughn wanted to know if he was actually opening up to their friendship, or if he needed more time. He wanted to continue pushing their friendship forward, but didn't want to overstep. For the first time in the breakfasts they shared, Gamal smiled as he ate. He was enjoying Vaughn's company. He was opening up. Vaughn was overjoyed, but didn't want to be overzealous about their progress and scare Gamal. They enjoyed the rest of the food before Gamal cleared the table. "Come, it is time for another story." Gamal led the way to the study. "What story will we read this time? A space adventure? A Wild West strategy? A tale of old?" Vaughn asked these questions, genuinely excited for today's story. "I have already picked one out." "Oh, and what is it?" "You'll see in a minute," Gamal said, chuckling, amused by how excited Vaughn was. "Have a seat. I will grab it off the shelf." Vaughn sat down near the fire, wondering what special story Gamal had chosen. "Here we are. This is a good story called The Fisherman and the Talking Fish." Vaughn sat back in his chair, ready to listen to this new story. "A man went out to fish one early morning. He gathered his fishing rods, nets, stocked his boat, and sailed out to the open waters. Having been a fisherman for many years, he knew all the best spots. As the sun rose over the waters, he parked his boat and cast his lines. Now he just had to wait. Before long, there was a bite. The fisherman raced over to the rod and started reeling it in. He fought with the fish, being pulled to either side of the boat, hands burning from holding on to his rod. But after a long battle, the fish lost his strength. Unwilling to lose this opportunity, the fisherman quickly reeled in his first fish of the day. When he pulled the fish out of the water, he was surprised with the size of it. This tiny fish fit into the palm of his hand. How could this tiny fish give him so much trouble? The fisherman threw the fish into a bucket of water, thinking he could use it as bait. He reset the line and waited. As he sat back enjoying a drink, he heard a voice say, "Free me, mister." He stood up and looked around, but saw nothing but open seas. He sat back down thinking it was in his head. But then the voice came again. "Please, mister, please free me." Looking around, there was still nothing there. As he walked around the boat, he noticed the tiny fish staring at him. The fisherman stared back, wondering if somehow the fish was the one who talked. As he was about to turn away, he saw the fish's mouth open, and words came out. "Please, mister, I need to get back to my family." How was this possible? Was he seeing things? But he did hear it. Was he just going crazy? The fisherman sat down, not sure what to do in this situation. As he sat there, the fish spoke again. "Mister, I am the one talking to you, and I really need to get back home." "How can you be talking to me? You're a fish," the fisherman said in disbelief. "I hear the world is large and mysterious, so something with that." They both stayed there silent, both unsure what to do next. After a few minutes, the fish spoke. "So, about letting me go?" "Why should I let you go? I caught you, and I even struggled reeling you in. For the trouble you put me through, I think it's only right that I keep you." The fish had no response. He didn't agree, but he had nothing to dispute that. So he chose a different approach. "I see you don't want to let me go, but what if we made a trade? You release me, and I will bring hundreds of fish to these waters for you to reel in." The fisherman sat down and thought for a bit. Was he actually considering making a deal with the fish? The money he could get by catching hundreds of fish would be astronomical. But would this fish even follow through with his side of the bargain? "Your deal is interesting, but how can I trust you? You are just a small fish, and if I release you, there is no guarantee that you will bring fish back here. You could easily swim away and never return." "I see your point. But what do you have to lose? With my size, I am worth nothing, and have no meat on me. So by releasing me, you lose nothing. And when I come back with lots of fish, then you can capture them all. I see it as a win-win for both of us." The fisherman thought he saw the fish smile. But can fish smile? They sat in silence for a while as the fisherman thought about the deal. He weighed his options, carefully considering the repercussions of listening to this fish. After a few hours, he hadn't caught another fish, so he went back to his little friend and said, "Okay, we have a deal. I will let you go and trust that you will bring a ton of fish back here." He picked up his bucket and walked to the front of the boat. "You better bring a lot of fish." He dumped the contents of the bucket into the water before the fish could respond. The fish swam to the surface and tried to wave before diving low and swimming away. The fisherman watched the water for a while, wondering if he made a smart choice, but only time would tell. Hours passed and the sun was high in the sky, but no fish could be seen. He waited for a few more long hours, and still there was no fish in sight. The fisherman sighed deeply, accepting that the fish he released was never coming back. The fisherman packed his rods and accepted his loss. He sailed back home with nothing to show for his time. As Gamal closed the book, Vaughn sat there stunned. "There's no way this is how the book ends," Vaughn thought. "What a depressing story. Why does Gamal think this is a great story?" Gamal set the book on the side table and stood up. "I see this book has you thinking, but we will discuss it after lunch." Gamal led the way to the dining room and set out a great meal. Vaughn didn't know when he had time to prepare all this food, but he was too hungry to really think about it. Vaughn ate quickly, ready to get back to the study and talk about the story. After waiting a while for Gamal to finish, they finally returned to the study. Vaughn ran to a seat. Gamal, taking his time, sat down, grabbing the book off the side table. He flipped it open and said, "Wasn't it a great story?" "It was interesting, but the ending was a big letdown," Vaughn responded. "I thought the ending was depressing. It just ended abruptly, and that didn't fit with what the story was about." "Oh? And what do you think the story was about?" "It was about taking a risk and seeing it pay off. The fisherman was presented with something unusual and given an option to take a risk. He weighed his options like he should and decided to take that risk. But having nothing come from it is similar to telling people that there is no hope. But sometimes there is no hope. I am all for a happy ending, but in life that's not always the case. There are many times where hope cannot be found, and what you release doesn't come back. True, life is often hard and sad, but if you only focus on that, then you miss the opportunity to strengthen yourself and to free yourself from that hopelessness. Gamal sat silent for a while, organizing his thoughts. Vaughn could see this story connected to him personally. He wanted to question him about it, but also wanted to be careful not to step on his toes. Vaughn delicately and cautiously asked, Gamal, I can tell this story is personal to you, so please tell me, what about it connects so deeply? I see what you're doing. You've been doing it for the last couple of days. You are trying to get close to me and get me to open up, so I will feel sorry for you and I will let you go, Gamal said, trying to hold back tears. Vaughn silently shook his head as he listened. That's not what I've been doing. Yes, I've tried to engage more with you, and I have tried to help you open up to me, but that's only because I wanted to be your friend. Gamal stared at Vaughn, refusing to believe that statement. Vaughn continued, After the first story, I truly saw how lonely you have been. Through that story, you showed me how everyone has left you, and now you are completely by yourself. That night, I promised myself that I would free you from that loneliness. I didn't really know how, so I tried to develop our friendship with what you brought me here for. You wanted someone to listen to your stories and discuss them with you, so that's where I started. Hearing all of this, Gamal sat in his chair, staring at the fire. He was holding back tears, unable to look Vaughn in his eyes. Gamal knew this was all true. He had seen it over the last couple of days, and Vaughn's voice also confirmed it to be true. But Gamal was not ready to accept it. He had spent years in the castle alone. He had wanted nothing more than a friend to talk to. But now that someone was reaching out, he was hesitant. Vaughn wanted to push Gamal to let him go, but chose to let his words sink in before asking another question. Do you think I will run away, just like that fish in the story? Gamal didn't answer, but his face said it all. Gamal was making his first friend in a long time, but he felt bad about taking him away from his life and forcing him to stay here against his will. Gamal knew he needed to let Vaughn go, but he didn't want to lose his only friend. Silence filled the study, as neither knew what to say next. Vaughn saw how much Gamal wanted to hold on to their developing friendship. He knew that letting him go would be extremely difficult, if even possible. Vaughn wasn't planning on abandoning Gamal, but he did want to see his family again, and let them know that he was okay. But how could he convince Gamal of that? A few minutes passed, and Vaughn spoke up. He had to try and convince Gamal that he would come back. Gamal, I can see that you want our friendship to continue, but to do that, you must let me leave. You can't keep me holed up here, never allowed to venture outside. I know it's horrifying as your newest friend wants to leave the castle. Vaughn got off his chair and kneeled close to Gamal. But no, I will come back. I have no intention of running away. But for our friendship to continue, you have to let me go. Gamal didn't speak. He just looked at Vaughn with tears forming in his eyes. He wanted to let Gamal go, but everything in him held him back. All those who left him before scarred him into struggling to let Vaughn go. After a long minute, he stood up and walked to the door. Without turning around, he said, You are free to go. I hope to see you again. Then Gamal walked out. Vaughn hurried to the door to thank him, but he was gone. Vaughn looked down a few hallways, but there was no sign of Gamal. He found his way to the front door and looked back. I will be back. I promise, Vaughn said, hoping Gamal was listening. With those last words, Vaughn walked out and ventured into the forest. A year later, late one evening, Vaughn quickly walked through a library, rushing because he was running late. He found the children's section and started looking in the study rooms, knowing that it was in one of these rooms. Vaughn suddenly heard a familiar voice and rushed over. He walked in and saw Gamal sitting there on a small chair, with a group of children on the floor around him. He was reading to them from an old, worn book, taking them on a wild adventure. Vaughn's entrance did not distract anyone. The children remained glued to Gamal and the story. The children jumped, oohed and awed, entranced with the story. Vaughn watched as Gamal excitedly took these kids on a journey. He could see the pure glee on Gamal's face as he read to them. It had taken Vaughn 10 months to convince Gamal to read stories in the library. He was so hesitant at first, but now that he had, Gamal wouldn't stop. Every week he excitedly came and read all sorts of stories at this library. Vaughn sat back, remembering how they first met, the kidnapping, the threats of death. Oh, how they laugh about that now. He continued watching as Gamal finished the story and closed the book. The kids looked sad as it was over. They begged Gamal to continue the story or read them another one. Seeing this, Gamal said, "The story may be over, but there's a whole library full of stories that have not been touched yet. And it is getting late, so come back next week and I will read you another story." Hearing this, the children smiled, excited for the future stories Gamal would read to them. Thanks for listening to The Voice of Adventure. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to follow wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also keep up with the stories and behind-the-scenes content on Instagram @Josiah the Author. Join me as we continue these adventures. See you in the next story.